If you're over 60, I'd like you to pause for just a moment. Not because I want to scare you, but because something remarkable may already be happening inside your body without you ever feeling it. You probably know someone living with diabetes. Maybe it's a friend, a neighbor, your spouse, or perhaps you've wondered whether it could happen to you one day. But what many people don't realize is that diabetes doesn't usually begin with high blood sugar. It often begins years earlier, long before most routine blood tests show anything unusual. Imagine hearing this. Everything looks normal. Most of us would breathe a sigh of relief. We'd assume our body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And in many cases, that's a perfectly reasonable conclusion. But sometimes, normal blood sugar doesn't tell the whole story. Because while that number may look reassuring, your body could already be working much harder than it should. Quietly, patiently, day after day. Not because it's failing, but because it's trying its best to keep everything under control. That's why insulin resistance is often called a silent problem. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything looks normal, until your body can no longer keep up. And by then, you've already missed years of opportunities to change the story. The encouraging news is that once you understand what's really happening, you can begin making small, daily changes that work with your body instead of against it. Not overnight, not through a miracle cure, but through simple habits, repeated consistently. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together. To understand why this happens, let's imagine your body as a neighborhood. Every house represents one of your body's cells, and every house needs a key before it can open its front door. That key is insulin. Every time you eat, your food is broken down into glucose, your body's main source of energy. But glucose can't simply walk into your cells on its own. It needs insulin to unlock the door. When we're younger, this process happens so efficiently that we never give it a second thought. Your pancreas produces insulin, energy goes where it needs to go, and life carries on quietly in the background. It's one of those amazing jobs your body performs thousands of times every single day without asking for your attention. But insulin resistance doesn't usually begin with a dramatic breakdown. It begins with something much quieter. Imagine those same locks becoming just a little harder to turn. Not today, not tomorrow, but little by little, year after year. The key still fits. It just doesn't work quite as well as it once did. Your body notices that resistance immediately, so it does something remarkable. Instead of giving up, it simply makes more insulin. Then a little more, then even more, because your body is incredibly determined to keep your blood sugar within a healthy range for as long as it possibly can. That's exactly where Grace found herself. Grace is 68 years old. She loves tending the flowers in her backyard. She walks her little terrier every morning. She enjoys cooking dinner for her grandchildren whenever they visit. If you met her at the grocery store, you'd probably think she looked perfectly healthy. Every year, she scheduled her regular checkup. Every year, her doctor told her that her blood sugar looked normal. So when she began feeling unusually tired after lunch, when she found herself reaching for the couch more often in the afternoon, or when clothes that used to fit comfortably started feeling just a little tighter around her waist, she blamed something almost all of us blame: age. And honestly, that assumption made perfect sense. Because nothing about Grace's symptoms felt urgent. Nothing seemed dramatic. Nothing told her that her body had quietly been working overtime for years, until one conversation with her doctor changed the way she understood everything. And that's where most people are surprised, because the first clues usually aren't found where we've been taught to look. Here's the part that surprises most people. Insulin resistance usually doesn't announce itself with one dramatic symptom. Instead, it whispers. A little less energy after lunch, a little more fatigue than usual, a few extra pounds around the waist that seem impossible to lose, an afternoon nap that suddenly feels necessary every day. On their own, none of these seem unusual. Together, they may be telling the same story. That's exactly why so many people dismiss these changes. It's just my age. I didn't sleep well. My metabolism isn't what it used to be. Sound familiar? Those explanations aren't unreasonable. In fact, many of them are partly true. But sometimes they're only part of the picture. Think back to Grace. She wasn't ignoring her health. She walked every morning. She cooked most of her meals at home. She kept every doctor's appointment. She believed she was doing everything right. And in many ways, she was. The problem wasn't a lack of effort. It was that nobody had explained what was happening beneath the surface. Most routine blood tests focus on one important question. What is your blood sugar today? But insulin resistance asks a different question. How hard did your body have to work to keep it there? Those are not always the same thing, and that's why many people spend years believing everything is perfectly fine, while their pancreas quietly works overtime behind the scenes. The encouraging part is that our bodies are remarkably adaptable. The earlier we recognize what's happening, the more opportunities we have to support them. And that begins with understanding one simple mistake that almost all of us make every single day. If I could change just one habit for most of my patients, this would probably be the first one. Not because it's the worst mistake, but because it's one of the easiest to fix. Imagine you've just finished lunch. You clear the dishes, sit down to watch television, read a book, or answer a few emails. Nothing unusual. In fact, that's exactly what millions of people do every single afternoon. But inside your body, something very different is happening. This is the time when glucose from your meal is entering your bloodstream, and your muscles, the largest users of that glucose, are suddenly doing almost nothing. It's a little like opening every delivery truck in a city, but keeping all the warehouses closed. The packages arrive, but there's nowhere for them to go efficiently. Here's the good news. You don't need an intense workout. You don't need to spend an hour at the gym. Sometimes, just a few minutes of gentle movement after eating can help your muscles begin using that incoming glucose more effectively. It's one of those small habits that seems almost too simple until you understand the biology behind it. And that's exactly where we're going next. Because the first habit Grace's doctor recommended wasn't medication. It wasn't a special diet. It was something she could begin that very same afternoon. Remember the delivery trucks we talked about a few moments ago? Right after you eat, those trucks begin arriving. Glucose enters your bloodstream, and your muscles become one of the biggest places where that glucose can be used. The surprising part is, your muscles don't have to stay completely inactive. Even a short walk can encourage them to begin using that incoming glucose more efficiently. Not because walking magically lowers blood sugar, but because your muscles naturally become more active consumers of energy when they move. Grace didn't start by joining a gym. She didn't buy expensive equipment. Her doctor simply asked her to do something she already enjoyed. Walk. Not for an hour, not at a fast pace, just 10 to 15 relaxed minutes after lunch whenever she could. At first, it felt almost too simple to matter. One of the biggest misunderstandings about exercise is believing it only counts if it's intense. But for many adults over 60, consistency often matters more than intensity. Small movements, repeated every day, can become surprisingly powerful over time, especially when they're timed well. And that brings us to something many people overlook. Movement is only one side of the equation. The way we build our meals can make that movement work even better. Imagine pouring a bucket of water into a dry garden. If you dump it all at once, much of it simply runs off. But if the water arrives more gradually, the soil has time to absorb it. Your meals work in much the same way. The goal isn't to fear carbohydrates. The goal is to help your body handle them more comfortably. Many nutrition experts encourage building meals around balance. Vegetables, a source of protein, healthy fats, and carbohydrates that fit your individual needs. When these foods work together, digestion tends to happen more gradually, which gives your body more time to respond naturally. Notice what we're not doing. We're not chasing perfection. We're not eliminating entire food groups, and we're certainly not trying to make every meal look exactly the same. Healthy habits last longer when they fit into real life, not when they demand a perfect one. When Grace began making these two small changes, a short walk after lunch and building more balanced meals, she wasn't trying to transform her life overnight. She was simply giving her body a little more help every single day. And what happened next wasn't dramatic. It was something much more encouraging. Her healthy habits became easier to repeat, because each one quietly supported the next. And that's where our third habit begins. Not with exercise, not with food, but with something many people underestimate. Here's something that surprised Grace the most. She thought her morning walk was enough. And to be fair, it was already helping. But her doctor asked a simple question. "What does the rest of your day look like?" Grace smiled and then laughed. "Mostly sitting, reading, watching television, talking on the phone, doing crossword puzzles." None of those activities are unhealthy. The problem was that they happened for hours without interruption. Our bodies were designed to alternate between movement and rest. Not movement once, then sitting for the next 6 hours. Every time you stand, stretch, or simply walk across the room, large muscles in your legs begin working again. It's a small reminder to your body that energy is meant to be used, not simply stored. You don't need to set a timer every 15 minutes. Life doesn't have to become that complicated. Instead, build movement into moments that already exist. Stand while talking on the phone. Walk to refill your water. Stretch during television commercials. Tiny interruptions, repeated consistently, often matter far more than we imagine. Let's talk about something wonderfully simple: water. Not because water magically fixes insulin resistance, it doesn't, but every process inside your body, including the way your cells function, depends on proper hydration. Many older adults gradually drink less water over time, sometimes because they simply don't feel thirsty as often, sometimes because they worry about making extra trips to the bathroom, and sometimes because life gets busy. One thing I've noticed over the years, patients who keep water nearby often drink more without even thinking about it. Not because they have better discipline, because the habit becomes easier. That's an important lesson. The easier a healthy choice becomes, the more likely we are to repeat it tomorrow. This final habit may be the most powerful of all. Not because it changes your metabolism overnight, but because it quietly supports every habit we've talked about today. Healthy routines rarely fail because people don't care. They usually fail because life gets busy. We're tired, distracted, or simply making decisions in the moment. That's where planning becomes surprisingly powerful. Grace stopped asking herself, "Will I make the healthy choice tomorrow?" Instead, she began asking, "How can I make tomorrow's healthy choice easier?" That small shift changed everything. Because every evening, she quietly removed one obstacle before it ever had the chance to appear. Take a moment and look back at everything we've covered. A short walk after meals, balanced meals, consistent sleep, managing stress, breaking up long periods of sitting, staying hydrated, preparing tomorrow before today ends. Notice something. None of these habits are extraordinary, but together, they create something much more powerful than any single habit ever could. They become a lifestyle your body can recognize and respond to every single day. Before we finish, there's one more piece of the puzzle that deserves a few moments of our attention. Not because it's more important than the 7 habits you've just learned, and certainly not because it's a miracle solution, but because even the healthiest lifestyle needs the right building materials. Your body is constantly repairing, replacing, and rebuilding itself. Those jobs depend on nutrients that come from the foods we eat every single day. One mistake I often see is people searching for the one nutrient that will solve everything. One vitamin, one mineral, one superfood. But our bodies rarely work that way. Think about building a house. Bricks are important, so is cement, so are the workers. Remove any one piece, and the entire project slows down. Your metabolism works much the same way. It's a team effort, not a solo performance. That's why many healthcare professionals encourage focusing on eating a wide variety of minimally processed foods whenever possible. Different colors, different textures, different sources of protein, different sources of healthy fats. Each meal becomes another opportunity to give your body the resources it needs, not just for today, but for years to come. So, how do you know if these habits are beginning to help? Most people immediately look at the scale, but your body often gives quieter signs long before dramatic weight changes appear. You may notice steadier energy throughout the afternoon. You may find yourself relying less on that extra cup of coffee. You may sleep more comfortably, or wake up feeling just a little more refreshed. These aren't guarantees, and they don't happen overnight. But they're often the kinds of small improvements that encourage people to keep going. There's another change that's easy to overlook. Healthy choices begin requiring less effort. The evening walk no longer feels like a chore. Preparing balanced meals becomes routine. Drinking water becomes automatic. Because habits repeated often enough eventually become part of who we are. That's when lasting change usually begins. Let's go back to Grace one last time. Several months after making those small changes, she wasn't a completely different person. She didn't suddenly feel 20 years younger. She didn't claim every day was perfect. What changed was something much quieter. She felt more confident, more energetic, more in control of the choices she made each day. And perhaps most importantly, she stopped feeling as though her body was working against her. Instead, she finally felt like she was working with it. If there's one idea I'd love for you to remember after today's video, insulin resistance doesn't usually develop overnight, and healthier living doesn't happen overnight either. Both are built one day at a time, one decision at a time, one habit at a time. You don't have to change everything before tomorrow morning. Choose one habit, practice it consistently, then let the next habit build upon the first. Because small actions, repeated with patience, can become extraordinary over time. If you found today's documentary helpful, I'd love to know which of these 7 habits you're going to begin first. Share it in the comments below. Your experience might encourage someone else who's watching today. And if you'd like more evidence-based conversations about healthy aging, nutrition, heart health, and simple habits that support a healthier life after 60, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for spending these moments with me. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next documentary.